focusing on Echo's theory of encyclopedic knowledge and the carefully selected methodology, the candidate leads the reader to concisely formulated and useful conclusions based on the results of a case study of bilingual terminology in the field of economics and finance. So I wish to welcome Riccardo Bravi and look forward to hearing his presentation.
Dr. Sabine Kirchmeier, President of the EFNIL, Professor Stickel, dear members of the EFNIL Executive Committee, members of the jury, distinguished members and guests, dear Chiara. I'm honored to be here today to speak in front of you, such a distinguished audience. And let me begin with some words of gratitude for you for having me here today. Well, it was a pleasure to listen to your conference yesterday at the Thesis, and I was really glad to hear some Italian sounds during the opera, the Capulets and the Montagues, from such a long distance. And you know, I've traveled this long way to Vilnius to introduce you to my work. My work has this title, Deutsche Bundesbank and Banca d'Italia, the encyclopedic knowledge shared in a socio-professional community of speakers. So here is an overview of my presentations today. My research presentation. So which are the key disciplines that I decided to include in my work? Well, first of all, institutional and specialized communication, which was a course held by Professor Cristiano Cervini at University of Bologna, campus of Forlì, and the methods and technologies for interpreting, Professor Claudia Lecci, conference interpreting between German and Italian, course held by Professor Priscilla Galazza. On this occasion, I would like to express my gratitude to my thesis supervisor, the three professors, and also to the director of the Interpreting and Translation Department of the University of Bologna, campus of Forlì, Professor Ira Torresi, and also former director, Professor Maria Chiara Russo. So which are the key topics that I decided to include in my thesis? The role of language for specialized purposes and specialized encyclopedic knowledge in interpreting. This is the main element in the frame of multi-language communication and conference interpreting, with the aim of preliminary preparation for interpreter and with a special use of software identification for specialized knowledge. So I would like to present my corpus. Its name is CoBank, Corpus and Banks. It's a non-representative, manual, bilingual, and comparable corpus. Non-representative means that it is not representative of the language, but it is representative of a specialized language of macroeconomics and finance. It is a bilingual comparable corpus because it is composed of the CoBank IT and CoBank DE, the Italian and German speeches. It is comparable. This is very important. It's not a parallel corpus. It means that CoBank IT is not a translation of the German and vice versa. These are two independent corpora made of the speeches from the annual press conferences of Banca d'Italia and Deutsche Bundesbank, chaired by the two presidents of the two institutions from 2017 to 2020. So which is the research question? Can the combination of a termontographic method on the one hand and corpus-based analysis on the other hand identify a trace of encyclopedic knowledge shared in a socio-professional community of speakers? I will break down this research question into the different ideas. So first of all, what is a socio-professional community of speakers? Like linguist Michele Cortellazzo said, it is a group of speakers who share a professional area and they modulate their expression according to social linguistic variables of field, tenor, and mode. In this case, we are treating the macroeconomists of the German and Italian central banks. Then the most important element here is the encyclopedic knowledge, which is a semiotic postulate by Umberto Eco, very well-known linguist. And he said it is the totality of recorded interpretations, an archive of non-verbal information somehow recorded over time. So to break it down, it is a past information for future interpretations. So Umberto Eco said everybody masters their partial encyclopedia, and the interpretation of different texts from different disciplines require, of course, the mastery of different areas of encyclopedic knowledge, different information, previous information. So let's have an example of what Umberto Eco defines as interpretive cooperation. Like, let's read this. The ECB is composed of 27 banks. 19 belong to the Eurozone and 8 to countries which did not adopt the euro. Well, in order to understand this sentence, you need to have previous information in your mind. Otherwise, it is too technical for you to understand. So you see here, you need to know what ECB is, European Central Bank. Oh, sorry, the European system of central banks. Then 27 banks are not commercial banks, but they are the central banks. And the Eurozone is the area where euro was adopted. So now let's shift to another part of the research question, shared encyclopedic knowledge. So different people, of course, have different personal encyclopedic knowledge. However, they might have some matching areas in common. So for a given message and a given interaction, we might assume as true that communication is successful only when information, with the prior information, that is encyclopedic knowledge, is shared in advance by the speakers and the public. So, which is the research aim? We are looking for traces of encyclopedic knowledge in the socio-cultural community of speakers composed of the two presidents of the Italian and German central banks, President Ignazio Visco and former President Jens Weidmann. So what do I mean by trace? Well, a term, you know, from Ferdinand de Saussure, is linked to a concept in a bionivocal relationship. So when you think to the term, you connect it to a concept and vice versa. So if you spot a term, you are recalling the concept which is linked to this term. And if you put a cluster of terms together and a cluster of concepts, well, cluster of concepts will build our encyclopedic knowledge. But what is a term? This is the first question. And the second question, how are those traces, those terms, identified? Well, language for specific purposes. This is another key definition that we need to go further for the presentation. It was presented by Bruto in Cortellazzo. So it's a variety of natural language deriving from a specialized knowledge and activities used by a restricted group of speakers. And it has a referential function because it has a bionivocal relationship between a signifier and a signified. And then the definition of specific technicism is also important here. Well, what are specific technicism? Unambiguous and irreducible term, field-specific concepts and objects. Let's read this passage. A primary surplus of less than a percentage point, such as the one that would be achieved in 2020 if the VAT safeguard clauses in the current legislation were deactivated without compensation, would not be compatible with a reduction of the debt to product ratio. Well, in order to understand such a passage, you need to have an awful lot of prior information, of unambiguous and irreducible terms that you have in your mind before interpreting the text. Primary surplus, you know. So what is the method that I followed for my thesis? Well, first of all, the corpus-based analysis, it is a quantitative method to use software to analyze speech, and the other method is a termontographic approach by Temmerman and Keremans. So what is a termontography? It is a graphic representation of a term ontology. It means it is a 3D representation of a term, its equivalent, and the conceptual link between the other term, among the terms. Not just a 2D representation like a glossary, the Italian part and the German part, only language equivalent, but no concept. So this is the method described by Kammerman and Teremans, a three-part method. You have a first part when you gather the speeches, a second part when you do the actual work of researching the termontological database, and the third part, you build an ontology and a termontological dictionary. The first part, the ontology, was created the bank map, and the second is the result is a glossary, gloss bank. So I followed a 5-step method here. First, speech selection. I selected the speeches that we saw before. Then corpus building. I built CoBank IT and CoBank DE as part of CoBank. And then the corpus analysis. I use the AntConc software. It is a concordance software to produce a word list, a keyword list, and n-grams. Well, a word list is ordered by frequency, a list of words ordered by frequency. Keyword list is a list of words ordered by relative frequency to a general corpus. And then n-grams are words like interest rate, 2 items, or 3 items, or 4 items. But then I built my glossary, which is named Gloss Bank, a selection of terms of for bank map, we'll see later, and then the actual building of the map, bank map. You see here the workflow that I used to identify which terms should be inserted into the glossary and then into the map. So here is an example of the Italian map. You see the grayish terms are the terms that are shared in both the Italian and German corpus. The red ones are not shared in the 2 corpora. And the blue ones are just notes that you need to use to order the map, but they're not included into the corpus. So this is the German version. And if you want to visualize it on my website, www.riccardobravi.com, you can do this maybe later today. Give you some seconds if you need to, but then you can go to my website. So let's jump to this, the comparison of BankMap IT and BankMap DE. You need a termontographic approach, leads to 2 termontographic maps, as we have seen, and the observation of common terms is done comparing the 2 maps. So terms in common and unpaired terms were identified to find this encyclopedic knowledge, shared encyclopedic knowledge. But why is a study of encyclopedic knowledge so important for interpreters? Well, because normally we experience expert to interpreter asymmetry. In monolingual conferences, experts communicate with experts on a symmetrical basis because they have the same knowledge. In bilingual conferences, expert-to-expert communication is hindered by unshared language code. But they know the ideas, they know the concepts, and an interpreter is often needed here in bilingual conferences. Of course, interpreters can translate messages and have to translate the message of the speech, but they're not economists. So what do they have to do? Well, they need to level up their encyclopedic knowledge to reach the knowledge of the experts in order to understand them and then understand the message and convey it to the other language. So interpreters need to level up their personal encyclopedic knowledge to fuel bilingual interpretive cooperation, as we've seen before, and counteract, as I read here, disadvantages, EK deficit, booth isolation, and interpretive effort. interpreters are in a booth, they cannot speak to the audience very quickly. So just to end my presentation, sooner or later, interpreters who show poor encyclopedic knowledge will be caught in an ambush. This is to paraphrase Umberto Eco's citation. He said, sooner or later, readers who show poor encyclopedic knowledge will be caught in an ambush. In this case, interpreters, because I'm focusing on the work of interpreters and interpreter preparation. So thank you so much for your listening. Here is a short reference. For the full reference, you can scan the QR code. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Can we take a few questions, Ali, if there are questions? Any questions?
Oh, thank you so much for your presentation. It's fascinating what you've done.
Thank you so much.
I was wondering, when you extract the terms of the corpus that you built, what kind of, did you use a program for that? And is that program available for everyone?
Yes, it is available for everyone. It's called EndConc. It is a software that you can download from a website. I can send you the website if you want later today. And you can use it to extract terminology from a text corpus, which is very simple. You just copy and paste text into a folder, and it's done. You can extract terminology for conferences. It is a useful tool also for interpreters in practice, for practitioners.
Thank you.
Thank you. Congratulations also on my behalf.
Thank you.
My question would be regarding to your dual corpus.
Yes.
So you have a corpus with two subcorpora. How did you manage to consolidate, or did you, in that regard, even was that even an important aspect, the morphosyntactic taggings of both corpora, since Italian and German are quite different?
Well, there was no use for no need for tagging. It was a manual corpus, so I didn't use tagging and alienation. It was not necessary. It could be a way to make it even better. Of course, I'm presenting to you to find solutions for making it better, what I did. So yes, it was not necessary. The only thing that is necessary from a qualitative point of view is that the two corpora are independent. It is not a translation of one corpus from Italian into German or from German into Italian. An important aspect I would add, if I can, well, I wanted to translate from German into Italian the terms, and not the other way around, because, you know, I am an Italian native speaker, and it is much better to work towards your mother tongue instead of the foreign language.
Thank you one more time.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you very much for your presentation, Mr. Bravi, and congratulations again.
I'm really glad I was able to be here today. Thank you so much for your interest.
Thank you. Okay.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Bravi, for your excellent presentation, and congratulations